Hi, so welcome to our Nuts and Bolts webinar. Really appreciate you joining us. My name is Fazilla Amide. I am a contact associate this morning going through this webinar with my colleague Lara Roberts, who'll introduce herself shortly. Before we kick off, we just feel it's really important to acknowledge the difficult climate that we're all in with regard to the coronavirus. And we know it's extremely challenging for everyone on a personal level, particularly. So we just wanted to take a moment to say, we do wish all of you and your families the best of health. Do concentrate on looking after yourselves as well as your families, and put that first and foremost before you focus on your role as a forum. I know lots of you have different capacity levels. You might be a one-man band, you might be a much larger organisation, but put yourself and look after your family. If you have any bandwidth, from a kind of forum role perspective, our roles really are supporting and signposting. So things like if you're able to keep up-to-date information on your website, if you're able to have a helpline that's available, but you don't have to help the world. Don't put anything more on your shoulders that you can't deal with, because at the end of the day, we're all parents. We all have difficult and challenging lives as it is. So be kind to yourselves and what you can achieve, and be kind to others. So we just wanted to kick off with that. So we're now going to start on the technical stuff in terms of this nuts and bolts session, just to allude to the fact that normally, under normal circumstances, we would be together in a room running this webinar, but unfortunately, as you know, we're separated. So bear with us on technical hitches. If Lara and I are kind of between us working things through because we can't see one another. So for those of you joining by PC, laptop, tablet or smartphone, hopefully you can see and acknowledge. If you've got any problems, if you go to the next slide. Sorry, just waiting for the next slide to show. Yeah, so if you do have any relevant questions that are not covered in the time allowed, what we'll be doing is after this, we'll be answering them and posting them on the contact website. Obviously along with the recording of this webinar, so details of that will be circulated next week. And at the end of the webinar, there will be an opportunity to basically ask your views, and if you can fill that information in, that would be really helpful, because that would help us going forward. In terms of timings and questions, as there are so many attendees have joined us, so thank you for taking the time out. It isn't going to be practical for verbal questions to be taken, so you are going to be all unmuted. But if at any point you have questions, and we will have certain sections where we'll be asking for questions, so it's a bit more interactive and you don't have to kind of remember right to the very end. If you see on your, usually it's on your right hand screen, you'll see a question icon on your GoToWebinar toolbar on the screen. And actually that will allow you to type your question into the text box and then submit that to the webinar administrator. And then what we'll do is we'll select as many of the relevant questions to answer as we can. Obviously, we only have an hour. We can overrun slightly, but ideally we'll try and stick to time for all of you. And obviously, if similar questions are received, we will condense them. So my name is Fazilla. I am currently a contact associate, but I am also chair of Our Voice Forum, Parent Carer Forum in Enfield, and I'm also one of the London regional reps for the National Network of Parent Carer Forums. And I'm now going to hand you over to my colleague Lara Roberts, who'll introduce herself, and we'll take the webinar from here.
Thank you very much, Fazilla. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for coming to listen to this webinar and hopefully be contributing to the discussion. My name is Lara Roberts. I'm a contact associate, but I have previously been a chair and a co-chair of my local forum, and I'm a member of the National Network of Parent Carer Forums. So before I get started, I'm going to be doing kind of going through the slides with you. This is a signpost hosting resource organisation resources we're talking about, and I will be clicking live links, and as we know, sometimes things don't always go that they want to, so I would ask you to just bear with me whilst I do this. And on a lighter note, most of us are working from home at the moment, and whilst I have managed to persuade my son to stay out of the room, I can't quite guarantee it at the same time, but I'm sure you're all experiencing the same thing as Fazilla and I are feeling this up. So going forward, why are we doing this? So Fazilla and I have led on behalf of Contact the Leading Your Forum leadership training. And what came out of the information that you tell Contact that you needed as forums was a how-to guide on to run a forum. And this is about the practical aspects of running a forum as well as managing it. There are a lot of resources available. So what we've done is we've put them into this webinar for you. The leadership training covers other aspects of the leadership, of what you said, but this is the how-to guide, and we thought it'd be helpful to have it all in one place and for us to talk it through with you so you can access it directly. So the purpose is to signpost to resources and guidance available to support the day-to-day running on a forum. And as we know, forums change, and we need to kind of go back to the basics, and this is a really helpful resource to help you kind of go through this. So what came out of the information you shared with Contact is these kind of key questions, and what Fazilla and I have done is we've grouped them together. So you are asking questions on why co-production, or where do you find news to support forums, or on good governance, how do you make your forum grow, how do you become resilient as well, and dealing with the challenges. Recruiting, supporting, developing, and these are all the questions that you developed as forums and that we will be expanding to show you where the resources are. So what are the key elements to running a forum? Well, as you know, it's about influencing services and commissioners, so making your case, building an active membership, passing the baton on to other people as well at the same time, building an inclusive forum, partnership working, and how to use social media to reach more parent carers who don't particularly want to be part of the forum, but will also benefit from the information that you're able to share. So for those of us who've been around for a while, I am going to include you in this, Fazilla, as well, or know the history of forums. One of the key questions that keeps on coming up is, what is parent participation? And you may be getting this from partners as well, or other voluntary groups, and what is co-production? So what I'm going to attempt to do now is I'm going to click on a link for you.
And while Lara does that, oh, actually that came up quite quickly. Over to you, Lara. Oh no,
it's still loading.
It's still loading. I was quite enthusiastic at that point. There we go.
So this talks about the introduction to parent carers. What is parent carer participation? What's a forum? And what's co-production? And it just kind of gives an overview of what forums do and how they do it. And as I say, this is helpful for your wider membership to understand, because it is quite a interesting concept to get your head round, and it's helpful to support partners with regards to this. Another thing that came up with regards to wanting to understand that context is kind of how do, I'm going to try this one, how do Contact and National Network, I knew it wouldn't work together? And for some of you, I don't think I'm able to pull it up, but I will share it a bit later. There is a Venn diagram which shows how Contact supports and empowers forums, and how the National Network works in partnership to make sure that the voices of parents, carers who are leading it are heard. Within it, sorry, Fazilla.
I was kind of clarifying to them because they can't see the Venn diagram.
Yeah.
It's basically currently the Contact are an umbrella for the National Network. So the National Network sits within that umbrella of Contact, and the National Network are in effect just a forum like yourselves, but all of the forums kind of bubble up and come under the National Network as a national organisation. Contact manage and administer and support all of the forums from a practical level in terms of grant administration, funding, managing the DFE grant, and have, you know, great regional advisors that can advise and support you. But recently, I think some of you are aware, if you've been in part of a forum for a while, that forum members decided that they wanted the national network to kind of grow up and become an adult and not be that child anymore. So as of April, we will be separating into 2 organisations, but clearly we'll continue to work very closely together.
Thank you, Fazilla. I will make sure that that link for the Venn diagram comes up. I knew this would happen. So co-production, we hear a lot about this word, and sometimes it's really difficult to explain it because it's not just a process, it's also a feeling. So what Contact have done is they have given us a link on what co-production is.
And actually, it might be one of your challenges around members and membership and understanding our role, and that actually we're really looking at collaboration, we're looking at working partnerships, we're looking to be that critical friend rather than kind of standing and lobbying and, you know, throwing stones from outside, if that makes sense.
And what you can see on this page is you could see a description of co-production, kind of what is it and why it's important. And it kind of, there's also a video on co-production at the moment, or you could just see how, for example, a local forum has worked in co-production through a document that is written. And if you want to know more, you can find it in the Parent Carer Forum handbook that Contact have as well. So it kind of explains what co-production is, but how it should work and where it should be at the same time. Just closing down all these tabs before I have lots of tabs. Another aspect to think around is how do we measure co-production? I think people have different interpretations of it. You said people come up with different ideas and it may not be it. So what Contact have done with partners is they've worked up on a quality indicator around co-production.
Yeah, it's
right. So
really
at the bottom of,
to be clear in terms of what co-production is and how do we know we're actually doing it. Sorry, back to you, Lara.
Yeah, thank you. So, so here is a definition. And so the National Alliance for Partnership Working, which is a collaborative group, including the Department for Education, Department of Health, National Network, Contact, Preparing for Adulthood, NDTI, all these acronyms that we're used to, have come up with a definition. So co-production is an equal reciprocal relationship where everyone's knowledge and skills are used to create better outcomes. And it highlights the four cornerstones, and they've done this in development with a local forum, a local area in Rotherham, to kind of come up to see what it looked like. But as I referred to earlier, there's quality indicators for co-production, because sometimes we need to measure what it looks like and what it feels like and where we need to get to. So if I click on this link, it should, and these are free for you to use as each organizer, and you can work with your partners, you can bring these quality indicators together and you can kind of work through them using those 4 cornerstones and measure where you are with co-production at the moment or where you'd like to be, because we can't, co-production is always evolving and is used at certain points. So whilst my Word document comes up, will show you hopefully what the quality indicators look like. There we go. And as you see, it's done with genuine partnerships, and it just talks about co-production and how we measure it and what are the questions for the quality indicators. And hopefully you'll find that very useful. So let's think about the next questions you raised or comments you raised was understanding Contact's offer. How can they support you? We've just highlighted on the slide a few things, the regional advisors that Fazilla's already alluded to, support with the Department for Education Grant Administration, face-to-face training and webinars, and access to resources and information such as today, and also associate tool. And I'll click the link for you.
While Lara's clicking on the link, I can say, you know, where sometimes you might have challenges, whether it might be as a forum with the local authority or health, or actually you might even have internal challenges with some of your own steering group members or members on of your committee. associates can come in for a short period of time and help support kind of work through some of those issues, which is really helpful as an outsider kind of coming in to support. So I know in Enfield we used that a number of years ago and was really, really useful support mechanism. So do check with your regional advisor if you find that you need to access that.
Thank you, Fazilla. So as you see, we've got you scroll down the page a bit and see how they support you in the following ways, such as advisor, the grant process, information, at least 8 webinars, and the associate pool, and also good practice examples, which are really important to kind of keep everyone going whilst we talk and we work in production together where we can. So, good governance. This was really interesting on the leadership training to hear about governance and how it is we have to kind of go back to it as forums on a regular basis. So questions came up, how can governance support the forum? How do I deal with conflict? And we will be addressing that a bit later. What are the top tips for governance? Why do we need it in the first place? Because sometimes it's about engaging people and why you need it as well. And we need guidance on payments for parent carers. So it's really important that we think about what good governance is. So what I'm going to do is just going to pause for a moment. I don't know if Fazilla has anything to add to this.
No, I think they're all good questions that hopefully in the next section we'll cover. I think just we've done a number of slides now. So if any of you have some questions, if you'd like to submit them, we'll try and answer them as best we can. So we've had somebody just say that I mentioned campaigning and collaboration. So and kind of being clear on the difference. So for example, we as a forum can campaign in as much as if we're not happy with either government policy or local area policy. We can do, but we do it collaboratively. So we kind of work within the system and we follow whatever rules or procedures that the systems allow. We don't go outside of that process. If, however, and we've had that situation, I think last year, where people were wanting to participate in demonstrations, of course, that's up to everybody's personal kind of remit and you can do that. And usually as forums, we just say, one, let the forum know, and you would be doing it as individual members. So you probably wouldn't be having your kind of, you've got a t-shirt with your own forum name and your identity on it. You wouldn't be placarding and demonstrating with that, but you can do it as an individual and you would seek permission. And again, back to governance, if you can cover some of that information in your governance structures and policies and codes, it just makes it so much easier and clearer for everyone. So we've also another question come in from a person called Andrea. What's the difference between the associate pool and the regional advisors? And that's a really good question. I'll answer that, and Lara, you can come in. The regional advisors are employed staff who work on a regular, on a daily basis and provide advice and guidance, usually over the phone, but they can come to meetings and support. An associate pool is an external group of people who are hired because they have specific skills in specific areas. So it might be about managing conflict, or it might be that they were an ex-local authority official and they know how the local authority works. And they can be hired for small durations of time, funding permitted, who can then come in and actually support the forum on niche issues and spend a bit more time and in-depth working for a short period of time. Lara, I don't know if you've got any other comments.
I think that's a correct summarization of the differences. As I said, the associates there to come in, support, but they're going to leave. Whereabouts you've got your contact advisors who will, your regional advisors who are there to, continually to support and empower forums to do their role.
Okay, thanks, Lara. I'm conscious of time, so I think we'll crack on. That's sure. Okay with everyone?
That's lovely. Thank you. So getting started. So there's a handbook that I've already referred to, but I think it's a really good resource about setting up and running your forum, and it has things like templates in it so you don't have to reinvent the wheel on how do you come up with a policy, finance, or any of those aspects. So if I just click on this link.
Just to say as well on the staff handbook, if you can, as a forum, get to a point where you have some kind of set number of policies, procedures that you can collate and put together, it's really helpful for induction. And if you don't have anything, you can use the contact information, templates, etc., and then kind of help build up your own. But it's really good for new members joining to be clear about what and how.
Right, so I've clearly accessed this on these resources sitting within the NNPCF as well. But as you can see, this is a handbook, and I believe some people will have hard copies of this, but it just kind of gives you an idea of getting started or restarting, because as I've referred to earlier, forums are always evolving all the time, and sometimes we have to go back to the basics and kind of start again and think about how we move forward. So it's just highlights getting started, working as a team, communication, improving services, and then it just gives you a chapter on each of those. So I think it's a really good resource to pick up, and you can pick the chapter you want and you can kind of move forward with regards to that as well. So that's just one example of kind of how you get started. Another example is forum contact details. We hear from forums who've met each other, or they've heard of some good practice, or someone has knowledge around personal budgets, or for example, and they want to know more, that they want to contact people. And so Contact have together a page which shows all the forum contacts throughout the country. There are 151 parent carer forums. There's quite a few of you. So I think it's good that you are able to pull out this information. You must, I suppose, also just consider that information changes quite rapidly. So it may be worth just talking to your regional advisor about this, but it's a good resource if you want to find out somebody, for example, from Calderdale or somewhere like that, and you can just email them or contact them. Right. So where to find news to support your forum's work? In this climate has been interesting for the last few years, and trying to keep on going is something for some people who've been in their forums can be quite difficult, because good news stories are the things that keep us going, but being connected, and perhaps today on all these days, in all these weeks, being connected is even more apparent for us. So, for example, Contact and NNPCF do a joint bulletin.
And while Lara, that's churning, just to say, you know, there's sometimes so many emails flying around and you can't see the wood for the trees. But if you can absolutely look out for these emails that are from either Contact or from the national network, then you know we've already kind of done a lot of the legwork, we've consolidated a lot of the information, and so it's got key pieces of information in there.
Yeah. And so this is a request form, and you request it, and then you're signed up and subscribed to it. So you'll get it. You'll get it on a regular basis. You'll get that information. Another way to do this is Contact News, their page on forums. So once that is churning, I think we'll all be fed up with the word churning lately. So this gives the news. So such, for example, of the funding firm for 2020-21, which is fantastic. It also shares, as you can see, the national event from last year, the highlight video, which is really good. And it's also really helpful to share with your partners to understand, or even your members, that wider membership who are signed up to you but not quite sure what forums do. It kind of gives them an example. And then, as you see again, it's got the quality indicators for co-production and the self-evaluation tool. Now, this is something that we've kind of just referred to, but I think it's worth just unpicking it a bit more. Understanding the grant. We know the foundation to forums are not just being parent carer led and working together in partnership, but to do that, you need to kind of understand your grant. I don't know if Fazilla, if you've got anything you want to add around that?
Yeah, while you're clicking, just to say clearly, we'd be just about entering into the new grant period where the DfE have just confirmed. So obviously we're talking about 2019, 2020, but clearly 2020, 2021. But, you know, again, it gives you everything, step-by-step information. I know when I first joined and I was panicked that I was going to have to do this work, and it's really kind of daunting if you've not done it before, but the guidance is very clear. You can go through, sit through, but more importantly, if you are unclear, again, Lara will signpost you to some documentation, but equally the regional advisors there are always on hand to advise you and talk you through things.
Yeah, thank you. And as you can see from this page, it you click on the link there and it will take you to the grant application form, to the terms and responsibilities about managing your grant, and just kind of thinking about the guidance notes, a bit of guidance to help you through that. But also helpfully, Contact have come up with a webinar on it, and I think that is helpful, especially if the words don't, if you understand the process but you need to kind of see it come alive. So having a webinar on it that Contact did is helpful guidance, and hopefully the YouTube I'll just show you the front page so you know what you're looking for, and you can use that alongside the guidance notes as well. There we are, it's coming up.
Like watching paint dry, isn't it?
So it's taking its time. I know, it's painful.
Yeah, it would be
There
really
you are.
showing you the
So
document.
parent-error participation. I'm now trying to get rid of that. There we are, done. Okay, so that gives you an example, but it brings it alive, the paperwork. So please use it as a resource. So growing your forum. So what does that mean? As forums evolve, and sometimes you need to sustain it or you need to bring new people into it. And how do you do that? But how do you make sure that you're reflective of our membership and to support them? So for example, there is I think it's a webinar on partnership working, or no, it's a PDF.
While that's coming up, I just wanted to say a couple of words. Sometimes people kind of get challenged in terms of the priorities. They're trying to set up a new forum, they're trying to recruit new members, they're trying to get a new committee member, then they've got the local authority wanting to co-produce, and they're kind of split in 17 places. And this is just a personal perspective in terms of, it's about, you know, for me, if you're setting up a forum, getting your house in order first before you're running around trying to support the local authority. To make sure, you know, you've got one or two of you, that you are able to start to link in with your membership to grow that membership, that you've got some governance in place, and then you're really set. You've got a really solid foundation for then to support local authority or health work.
And as you can see, this is a PowerPoint, so you can refer to it a bit later on. So, but it talks about that partnership working, which is key to being part of a forum, and that wider engagement and working in partnership with other voluntary groups that you come into contact with, and making the best of opportunities together. Another way to think about when it's kind of growing your forum, how do you get more parents involved? I think it's helpful for parents to understand how forums work and what things we have in place. So, for example, you can kind of refer to the memorandum of understanding that is signed between local areas and forums about that partnership working. It helped demythitize what forums do as well. So it just kind of gets, this is our memorandum understanding of how we work together, but it can also be used when you're working with other partners on working on joint things within your communities together. So dealing with challenges. This is really difficult because everyone joins a forum because they want to ensure the voices of families and go forward, and dealing with internal as well as external challenges is really difficult stuff. So Contact have done a webinar. Basically, I'm not going to click on it, but as you can see, I can hover over it and it will take you straight to it, on resolving conflict, and it will help guide you through the experience that forums feel around that. There's also having a clear code of conduct in place that needs regular reviewing. to making sure that that's in place when you're dealing with challenges, but the webinar discusses it. Another aspect that forums have come to us with is around that co-production and campaigning. So I'm not sure if it's last year or the previous year, Contact and NNPCF, and I think they also worked with other partners to come up with what is the difference between co-production and campaigning. And Fazila's already spoken about it, but I think it's helpful to have it in one place, and especially when you're dealing with members outside your forum, or you're being challenged by your own members on why you're not doing this, you can kind of reflect on this document and how you work together. And there you go. There's the guidance document, and it kind of talks about it. I don't know if you have anything to add on this, Fazilla?
No, I've kind of mentioned a couple of points on there, but I think to your point, Lara, I think it's really important sometimes, not just for us to understand our own remit, but to look at the external partners, organisations, because it's not always clear. So I think if you can be as clear as possible, even if you can have some of these documents posted on your own websites for easy access to the other people, if they click on, you know, what's the role of a parent care forum, what do we do, what's our role in terms of campaigning, then actually they can just see it clearly and transparently on the website. So a lot of these things you can link to and share them on your own systems. I'm just thinking we've actually gone through quite a lot of information in a very short space of time.
Yep.
An opportunity for some questions, if anybody's got any questions out there. So just somebody's actually just come, I think Julie's just made a comment to say that the grant webinars are updated each year. So clearly there might be small tweaks in the process procedure, and the one in April may well be slightly different to the one used last year. So always do make sure that you're using the latest links and the latest information. And again, if you've got any questions or concerns, there's a team always there to support you, but your first point of contact is probably your regional advisor. Any other questions that you would like to ask? And say we've kind of sped through that information quite quickly. So we've just had one question through from Joanne, who, so I'm just reading the question here. It looks like if you're a small organisation, it looks like there's quite a lot to be done, and there's lots of resources, and kind of how do you prioritise what to do first, which I think is a really good question. Lara, feel free to add, but I think again, for me, we think the kind of boring stuff is all your paperwork and your codes of practice and your policies, and we're really keen to kind of just run around and talk to the local authority, and that's not necessarily always the most helpful. We would be suggesting that you get your processes and your policies in place before you do anything, because actually that helps you give a really good infrastructure then to build on that foundation. And then you attract your kind of parents who are seldom heard, so that you can start to be a cross-representational group. Coffee mornings, popping into schools, doing that kind of thing, light touch work, teas, coffees, simple stuff can be really effective in terms of growing your membership. And then when you're confident with that and you've got some people that you're representing, I think then it's at that point you can go out to the local authority and to health. Lara, I don't know if you've got any comments on that question.
I feel as a person who usually shudders at the word policy, because it's not my forte, but I feel it's when you go back to basics. You know, we all want to do something, we want to change things, but we need to kind of go back to those basics and that foundation of our code of conduct, and have those things in place, because we're all very different people from different parts of the world, in different parts of England, should I say, and we have very different experiences, and we're coming together on this one outcome of working together in partnership. And we all bring expertise at the same time, but sometimes that does lead to challenging conflict, just because we all live very different lives, and that's okay, because that's what makes forums forums. So I think getting that code of conduct and getting those foundations in place, because whilst you don't think you need it, you never know. All it takes is a few changes internally or even externally with your partners, and it can change the dynamics of the forum working, and going back to basics will kind of help with your foundation there.
Yeah, thanks, Lara. Another comment's come through. Actually, it's really helpful from Sue. As you mentioned, forums as a source of information, and that's a really good point. Forums can also ask other forums questions via the National Network closed group, regional Facebook pages. So it's really useful to kind of network amongst yourselves in terms of, oh, actually, I heard that you've implemented and worked on a transport policy, X, borough. Can you help us know, how did you do it? Have you got documentation? Because again, back to priorities, none of us want to reinvent wheels. And if we are, constantly challenged with our time, if somebody's got one that you can just amend and just put your different borough or, forum logo on, it's much easier. So really, really good point. Do utilize other forums and networks. We talked about the lists. We talked the list of contact lists for forums. We've talked about a Facebook page. And obviously the regional advisor will know what's going on in your region and can maybe signpost you to other forums that you can speak with. Lara, I don't know if you've got any other thoughts on that.
No, I think forums all have the solutions already, and they've already come up with it, and it's about supporting each other and looking after each other, because we all want to do the same thing, which is improve the outcomes for our children and young people and families. Yeah, so that leads nicely onto peer-to-peer support.
Just one more question.
Yes.
Sorry, one more question. Sorry, it's just come through. I was asking about the grant monitoring information. When will it be available? So actually, it's going to be available from the 31st of March or very soon thereafter. So watch this space, hopefully next week. Sorry, Lara.
No worries. No, thank you. Thank you, Fazilla. So thank you for that question, Sue. As you see, we've gone on to peer-to-peer support. So where can I get it from? Where do I access it? And I suppose we're going to show you some of the resources, but also it's important to remember that you have regional network meetings, though admittedly they'll probably all be quite virtual going forward, but you have regional network meetings in each of your region, and to kind of engage with that, to kind of go to that, to take time to hear from your guests, work together as a collective in responding to things. So I think if you link up with your contact advisor or talk to your NNPCF steering group member, they will know when they are. So that's a good opportunity of face-to-face, especially for those people who don't like using social media, and we totally understand that. Another one, a really quick resource, is the NNPCF. They run this as part of their communication. They run the closed Facebook page. So if I click on that link, if you're not already signed up to it, what it will do is it will take you to the front of the page, and it will ask you to join the group, and it will ask you a few questions, which forum are you part of, and you just follow that and kind of what's your role within the forum. But that's if you have a quick question such as where do I find a policy on GDPR, even though you can find it in these resources, usually there's somebody who will be able to respond or signpost you. For the parent carer representatives who are active in the 151 parent carer forums, and that get the Department for Education funding via contact. So that's a really quick resource to kind of, and then you can ask for good practice as well within that. So that's really helpful, and it's good to see discussions going on within that group. So sharing ideas and promoting your forum. Most forums work really hard, and they don't get opportunities to stop and promote their forum, because we're usually dealing with something that's coming up and that's a priority. But sometimes it's really helpful to kind of stop and reflect. And there are a few webinars on here, and I'm going to make Fazilla blush. I'm going to click on a link here called Presenting Your Forum. And this is I think it's a presentation or a webinar, and it's around presenting your forum. How do you do that? And what do you do to think about this? I don't know if you have anything to add, Fazilla, because you were part of this.
Yes. So yeah, again, lots of forums are constantly saying around how do we present ourselves? How do we get ourselves across as credible? What communications do we need to think about? And these, again, are really important things. So when I go back to prioritizing yourselves and how you're setting yourself up, part of that is around, you know, who you are, what you stand for, what are you trying to achieve within your local area? How do you make sure you're coming across in the best way to whether it's local authority or to your own members? And again, there's some really, really useful information in there. So a really good starting point if you're setting out.
Thank you. And another good one, which is a webinar, is good practice in voluntary management, because we realise that the majority of forums are voluntary led, and you do a lot of this out of your own home, and you have to manage not only staff, but you also have to manage volunteers as well at the same time. So there's a webinar clip on around how to practice in volunteer management, or how to make your case. So it's not easy to talk to wider stakeholders about the role of the forum. So where are there useful webinars to support these? And these will be helpful for you. And then we come to the resources that the national network have pulled together. And this comes from the members, basically, the 151 forums, on what are the key things that you feel are the big issues, the big themes that your members are telling you. And the network came together over the last few years and started pulling together these talking points. And so, for example,
Yes, clicking onto that. Again, back to prioritising, forums don't always have the time to be researching and trying to be up on everything, and you don't have to be. What we're trying to do here is do a lot of the legwork for you, do that research that's current. So really, you have a one-stop document on each of these topics that you can literally just refer to, take to a meeting, share with your members, so that everybody's up to speed quite quickly. And it also gives you kind of a position statement in terms of where the national network is on things, to kind of help focus your conversation and look at where your position is in the borough.
And as you can see, it breaks down what educational health and care plans are. It gets some quotes, kind of recognizing what they are. And then it kind of gives you some guidance. What are the statistics out there with regards to it? It gives you links, the process, and it kind of talks you through it. But as Fazilla said, you know, this is a really good resource to take back to your local area, because it's not just you saying this is your membership. The membership you are part of are all saying the similar things. So it kind of gives some solutions as well as some challenges. So it's kind of a good talking point to share with wider partners, and also to share with your members as well, so that they understand where you're coming from as an organisation. Another example is SCN support. And this document's come together, but these are the main key things you are talking about, and it just does the same format, talks about what it is, where it sits within legislation, what are the statistics, but it also kind of thinks about kind of moving forward, mainstream schools, and kind of bringing some solutions as well, but also some recommendations for partners to think about. So as you see, you have quite a few of these talking points, and they're all active, so go use them as a good resource in your local area.
And slightly related to that, but not quite, that as being part of the, you know, the Parent Carer Forum and receiving the grant from the Department of Education, all forums are also automatically members of Community Matters. And that they can actually help with governance work and setting you up, because I know I've mentioned it a few times. So if you're kind of stuck, you are part of that group, and again, you can just contact your regional advisor to get further information on that to give you some help and support.
Thank you.
So we've kind of done a whirlwind tour of all the resources, a bit of a clearly you'll need more time to kind of digest this information and go through and access. But in the meantime, if you've got any questions that you would like to submit, please, if you can do that now. So we've just had a question from Margot. When establishing foundations, should we consider using grants for infrastructure also, as without it, a lot of printing off of documents, etc., falls on volunteers and maybe then having to use your own resources? So absolutely, I know regional advisors constantly say that in terms of your grant and what's permissible, infrastructure is really, really, one of the key provisions. So whether you might need a telephone or a couple of phones to manage a helpline, if it might be setting up a website and you need some support in either setting it up or running it or hosting it. If you need printers, print paper, laptop, and I would say, in this virtual world that we have gone into, it has been going on for a while. So you might now need thinking about, actually, we need a bit more equipment to have virtual meetings. It might be, for example, that I know Contact are looking into some technical infrastructure for having virtual meetings such as GoToMeetings, and they're looking at subscriptions. So they're the kind of things that you could be thinking about to kind of get yourself set up. The other thing that, you might decide, and as a forum in Enfield, we've kind of dipped in and out. We've paid for some money to get an office because we thought that would be easier to work for us, and some storage. And then we've ended up all working back at home again, and so we've stopped using that. So some of it you might want to trial for a year, see how it works, and if it doesn't, you can always, move things forward. Lara, I don't know if you've got any other thoughts on that point in terms of infrastructure, how we can use the grant effectively.
Yeah, I think technology is our way forward now. So I think investigating that a bit more and making sure that people are comfortable with virtual meetings and how to do it is really, so something about training and kind of supporting your volunteers, build that up with you at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. And I think somebody else has just asked a question about technology and how long we might need to be using this for. And actually, I think this is, now we've discovered the technology, I think you might want to look at working virtually as one of your normal ways of working certainly for the foreseeable future. So you might want to consider doing online meetings, teleconferences, GoToMeetings, and there are different packages, there are different systems, or even from a work perspective, if you all have Microsoft, there's an app called Microsoft Teams where you can have face-to-face calls. We know there's Skype, Zoom, so it might be an opportunity whilst you're at home to maybe look at some of those apps, for want of a better phrase, and see what might work best for yourselves. And again, always there's advisors at the end of the phone, or other forums actually are often the best, I would say, who are already on it, as it were. You can contact to talk to them about, how, why, where, how much does it cost. But do you think when you're thinking about your grant and you're applying for your grant application for this coming year, even though you may not be doing face-to-face meetings, do think about how you can repurpose your work if you have capacity. Again, don't put pressure on yourselves, but if you've got capacity, how you can work in a slightly different way to still keep connected. And so the first part of your grant can be looking at things like that whole virtual and online working.
And I also think social resources, if you've got teenagers at home who are good with software and are able to navigate it a lot quicker than you are, especially if you feel a bit nervous about it, as we all do kind of going through to this. So I would use them there as a little resource to help you kind of go through it. But as you say, there is lots of software out there at the moment, but you've got to find what's right for you you and your forum and your members, and what do your members have to say about that, because not all of them will be able to access that software, and how can you support them to remove the barriers to be able to participate?
Yeah, and it might be one step at a time. If it's all new to you, you might want to just as your own committee or team actually just get your heads around it and how to do it. I know as a team, only I think it was last Wednesday, it was the first time that we accessed Go2 as a team, and lots of people were struggling. So make sure that your team are comfortable first, and then when you're confident, then you can go out to others. I just had another question come in saying, how will the GDPR be affected using personal phones and PC and laptops? And that's a really good question. There's probably a couple of points on that. One, I think that's why using your DFE grant for infrastructure is useful, so that you don't have to use your personal ones. Now, I know quite often we do, I know I do, but they are things that you can legitimately spend your funding on. If you are using your laptop, and actually even if you're not, the GDPR rules are still really quite tight. So you need to think about security. You need to think about how your systems are secure, how you're sharing information. You know, what you wouldn't expect to do is share personal information and just send it along a Yahoo email. You might want to use systems like Egress, which you can download quite easily, that are secure systems to share information. But also really just think about what information you are sharing, because quite often, if you have a secure database that is shared and is secured in the cloud, that should already be compliant, but do check. That should be containing, you know, your personal details of your members, etc. But actually, just think about how much information you do share and why you need it and why you need to keep it. So we don't need lots of personal information. Often you can do maybe a survey that's asking very generic information and not people's personal details. So I think part of it is also challenging why you need personal details, why you need to retain them, and where you retain them. And as long as you've got a secure database and that information is secured there remotely, and it's not on personal laptops, that if you then left it somewhere and somebody took it, you know, clearly you're in breach of the guidance. So I think it's, again, if you've got any questions, maybe talk to your regional advisors. But Lara, I don't know if you've got any other thoughts on that one.
No, I think we're especially around WhatsApp groups and stuff like that, because that's sharing personal detail. I'm not sure how we're going to kind of navigate when our virtual groups come together, how we're going to navigate that. But I think it's always worth going back to GDPR and go back to the basics of why you're using that information in the first place.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I'm just conscious, I think we might have one final question here, because I'm not sure how much time we're going to have going forward. But so a question from Lorraine says, some of our steering group are looking to set up forum for post 26 young people, so family carers can get support and work as PCFs there. Any suggestions? So that's interesting, because obviously as forums have developed, we used to look at support young children, and then we had the SEN reforms going to 16 to 25. I think the challenge you might have is around grant funding, because the grant only applies to up to 25. But again, I know some organisations have spoken to health, and particularly where they might, some of these adults might have continuing healthcare needs, etc., that some charities and organisations, as well as CCGs, give some small amount of funding to organisations to set themselves up for post 26. So, for example, in Enfield, we've got Our Voice, but then we've got the older population called CAPE, Carers and Parents of Enfield, and they get some funding from a charity called Enfield Disability Action, and they kind of operate in a similar way to us. And so we work very closely with them in everything that we do. So I think there are different ways to set yourselves up. But yeah, hopefully that, you know, there's lots of good practice around how the 0 to 25 groups do it. Lara, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that one.
I know a few years ago there was a national organisation that supported, because there's so much experience and talent and expertise that develops within forums, and parents want to take that on to a next level. But I think the organisation kind of ceased due to funding. So I think that's an interesting question to think about, how that goes forward. But see what's local first of all, but also chat to your other forums and see what they're doing around it. And how do we make the best of the expertise from our volunteers kind of going forward, as well as making sure that our young people who take it out also have their voice as well at the same time.
Oh, we've just got a comment from Margot here on this topic. It says health and social care groups are running a post-26 called Rethink in Solihull, and they're in receipt of some grants. So actually it's a good point in terms of your adult social care disability teams. They may also consider providing some funding to support. And I know CAPE in Enfield, we work very closely with the adult learning disability team. So yeah, I think there is support out there, and also just other groups, whether it's you know, National Autistic Society, etc. There are already large organisations who you can tap into to get support and run things on a local level. Okay, I think if there aren't any more burning questions, because we can obviously answer any of the other questions after this webinar, and we'll post them up following next week. Lara, oh no, it's what's next. So I think hopefully this webinar has allowed you to have one space where you can get access to everything you need and actually go through it at your own pace when and as you need it. So do think about how you might want to share those resources, because I think that's the key thing, is that everybody, to try and ensure that everybody's aware, because there's so much stuff out there. It's information overload at the moment. So think about how you can share with your steering group, how you can use it for induction to help new members get on board more quickly. Think about how you might want to take some different topics and do some team development work. Think about succession planning so that you're, you know, number two, if you have one, or if not develop one, will, you know, have all of this information to hand that you can pass the baton on. Just so that, I use the word not reinventing the wheels. There's so much stuff out there. What we don't want is forums replicating and starting from scratch on things, when actually there's a wealth of information and support out there for them. So I'm conscious we're coming to the end. So hope you found this webinar useful and helpful, and that if, as a resource, it should be around for a good long time so that you can access it from next week onwards. I'd like to say thank you to Lara as well, and to the contact team for helping us run this webinar despite everything that's been happening. And I do wish you and your family good health, that you stay safe, stay at home. And yeah, so we're going to close now, and thank you for listening.
Thank you.